you can even watch back. Giving players all the props or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk facts.
We're giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
Playing on the car ride, play it when you lounge. X and O, you know that we can hold it down. Shout out to my man Sammy, got it off the ground. And to all the listeners tuned in right now, got debates, analysis, and speculation. This is sports talk for the new generation. You know where to find us, got a reputation. Sick podcast, your #1 sports destination.
Giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
S-I-C-K is the sickest podcast. Tune in for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk back. S-I-C-K,
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 S-I-C-K.
All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
S-I-C-K is the sickest podcast. Tune in for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk facts.
We're giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
Playing on the car ride, play it when you lounge. X and O, you know that we can hold it down. Shout out to my man Sammy, got it off the ground. And to all the listeners tuned in right now, got debates, analysis, and speculation. This is sports talk for the new generation. You know where to find us, got a reputation. Sick podcast, your #1 sports destination.
Giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
S-I-C-K is the sickest podcast. Tune in for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk back. S-I-C-K,
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 S-I-C-K.
S-I-C-K.
Turn up your volume. Because you're about to listen to The Sick Podcast. With Tony Marinaro.
55 seconds left in the penalty, a minute and 27 seconds left in regulation time. Boston 4, Montreal 3. Lafleur coming out rather gingerly on the right side. He gives it into Lemaire, back to Lafleur. Oh!
The sickest Montreal Canadiens podcast.
You're in the ball!
Sports entertainment like no other.
Rejoint, on lui fait perdre la rondelle, une passe devant. Et c'est le dégagement et ce sera la victoire des Canadiens. Stanley pour les Canadiens, le 23e de l'histoire.
You found the dogs! John, you found the dogs! He found the dogs!
And all together, they worked a young team to the top. And now, a 24th Stanley Cup banner will hang from the rafters of the famous Forum in Montreal. The Canadiens win the Stanley Cup.
Brought to you by Energy Transportation Group. Driven to be different. La Tibi. Embrace your true nature. And Playground, your premier gaming destination. It's gonna be sick.
Marinaro on this Tuesday, June 11th. Thank you for watching the Sick Podcast, brought to you in part by Energy Transportation Group, brought to you in part by Bittt TV, brought to you in part by Playground. But I have big news, big announcement, of course. I think we've already talked about it once or twice, but let's make it pretty big today. And let's tell you right now that we are going to the draft. That's right. We are going to the NHL draft. The Sick Podcast NHL draft coverage is presented by Betway. And on the premises will be the Sick Podcast with Tony Marinaro, the Sick Podcast, the Eye Test with Pierre Maguire and Jimmy Murphy, and Shane Gaumont is going to be representing the Sick Podcast, the Recruits Draftcast. So 3 different Sick Podcasts will be in Vegas, and we'll be bringing you our podcast live from Vegas. We're going to be there on the 25 to the 30 of June, and it's a good thing. The 24 is a holiday, of course, here in Quebec, so we're going to be off. But on the 25th, 26th, 27th, 28th, and 29th, for 5 straight days, you're going to have draft coverage live from Vegas, presented by Betway. And we thank them very, very much for that. All right, I have another big announcement to make, and that is this Thursday. At 1 p.m., I expect to get there earlier, by the way, probably around 11:30 a.m. or so. I'm going to show up at Souvlaki Authentique at 410 Chemin de la Grande Côte in Boisbriand. And I'm going to be there for a live podcast, Habs podcast at 1 p.m., which will be uploaded, and you'll be able to watch it at around 10 p.m. So special thanks to Terry and Costa for that. Souvlaki Authentique, 7 locations in and around the greater Montreal area, of course. Vaudreuil, Perreault, Pierrefonds, Lachine, Lécoteau, Ville-Marie. And, of course, we're going to be at the one in Boisbriand. Family-operated Greek restaurant, 7 locations. They use fresh Quebec chicken, fresh Quebec pork, both hand-cut, marinated in-house. Their gyros hand-stacked, never frozen, once again in-house. No MSG in any of the recipes. Greek potatoes, not your Yaya's Greek potatoes, unique lemon sauce, that is. Thanks to our friends, Terry and Costa. We're going to be there. We'll see you there on Thursday. It's the first time that I have him on the Sick Podcast, and I'm very, very happy to welcome from Journal de Québec and also Journal de Montréal, but based out of Quebec, Kevin Dubé. How are you?
Hey, Tony. I'm good. Thanks for having me.
You're
first English podcast for me ever. So I hope you won't go so bad.
Well, I heard you say about 20 words, and already I could tell you that your English is better than my French, and I'm making a pretty good living working out of French. So you know what? I think you're going to be okay. Going to be okay. Listen, I have seen and read and heard a lot of your work, especially over the years, especially in the last couple of weeks, because, of course, last week you were at the Combine in Buffalo. So I had a chance to see you, of course, on TVA Sport. And I said, you know what? This guy's really good. So much so, I'm going to have to get him on. So thank you for joining us. There's a lot to touch on today. And, of course, here in Montreal, the big focus is who the Canadiens are going to pick with pick number 5. Grant McCagg joined me yesterday, and he had an opinion on who he thinks might be available at number 5, which I'll tell you in about a minute or two. But anyone's guess right now is as good as anyone's. Let's only the Canadiens know, and maybe that they don't even know themselves, because I get stopped in the street every day. Hey, who are the Canadiens taking at 5? And I say, well, tell me who's going in the top 4, and I'll probably have a good idea of who's going at 5. We don't know who's going in the top 4. So let's start with that. Did you do some digging? Did you do some asking around? What is the consensus? Is there a consensus as to what some of those teams in the top 4 might be looking for? And after having said that, who they might end up picking?
Yeah, I think it'll depend, and it'll depend on what the Blackhawks do at number 2. And I think a lot of people think that the draft starts at 2, right? Because Celebrini is a lock. We know he's going to San Jose. There's no debate about that. But it really starts at 2. If the Blackhawks select Demidov, then there's an option. Because let's not kid ourselves. I think Montreal plan A would be to draft a forward because of what Kent Hughes said at the end of the season. We want to add some offense to our team and some physicality, but Demidov would bring a lot of offense. So I think probably the plan A is to have a forward there. But if the Blackhawks select Demidov at number 2, then it becomes very interesting because Anaheim has a lot of forwards. They traded Drysdale for Cutter Gauthier, so probably want to go with a defenseman, Silayev. We talk a lot about the big Russian D, Silayev or Olev Shunov, of course, who's another option for the Blackhawks at number 2. And then what does Columbus do? A lot of people think that they're high on Cade Lindstrom, the big forward from Medicine Hat. Which is probably another player that the Habs are targeting. So if Demidov and Lindstrom are gone in picks 2 and 4, then the Canadiens have a very interesting decision to make because they a lot of people think we tried to speak to Kent Hughes in Buffalo and his answer was, I can't really talk to you right now, guys, because I know what your questions are. I know you're going to ask me if I want to pick a forward at number 5 and if we're going to trade the 26th pick. And he was right. You know, that's what everybody wants to know. So at number 5, there's going to be a very interesting decision. And if Chicago goes with Levshunov, then it becomes more interesting because if Anaheim goes D, then there's 2 and 3 defensemen, and then you're sure to have either Demidov or Lindstrom or another forward you like at number 5. So I'm not sure, and you know I don't have any information on that, but I'm not sure the decision has been made. Montreal went to have dinner with a couple prospects. We can talk about it later if you want. What do we make of these dinners? I don't know, but for sure there are a lot of options, and I wouldn't, you know, I think defenseman's an option too, even though we are all thinking about a forward. I don't think we have to exclude a couple defensemen because that's a very good defenseman year this year.
I was laughing when you said that, Kent. You said, guys, I'm not going to talk to you because I know you want to know if I'm going to draft the forward at 5 and trade 26. And you know what? If he didn't want to hide anything, he probably would talk to you. And even though nothing's set in stone, I would imagine he's leaning towards yes for both. Yes, drafting the forward, and yes, trying to trade that 26 pick.
Well, like I said, I agree with you. I think it's plan A, but like you know, the draft can be very unpredictable, and that's what a lot of people think it will be this year, an unpredictable draft because there doesn't seem to be a real consensus after one. Like a lot of people talk about Demidov, but there are a lot of risks associated with drafting this Russian winger who hasn't played in professional hockey for the whole year, and there's the contract situation that's a little complicated. So there is no consensus. So it really depends on what the Blackhawks do, and then there will be a lot of surprises, I think, in the draft. There were a lot of picks that'll be very surprising for some people. I've started talking to scouts a little bit about the first round, and it's all over the place. Some teams have a player at probably 7, and the other teams will have him at 17. So it's going to be very, very interesting.
I spoke with Graham McCagg yesterday of the Recruits Draftcast and former Montreal Canadiens scout in the Bob Gainey administration. He said that up until a month ago, he had Parik at number 3. And then after watching the Memorial Cup, he no longer has him at number 3. So things change, right? Based on a Memorial Cup showing. And I think Dickinson scored a lot of points during the Memorial Cup. And let's talk about that supper that you talked about, right? The Canadiens, based on what we know, took 4 players to supper. They probably took more. I don't know if they did or if they didn't, but they took Lindstrom to supper. They took Iginla to supper. They took Eiserman to supper, and they took Dickinson to supper. Out of all of them, I'm really surprised they took Eiserman to supper. And it's got me thinking, why did they take him to supper? Is it because I don't see them drafting Cole Eiserman at 5? And based on an information I got a couple of months ago, the information I had was at 5 or 4 or 6, wherever they pick, if that's where they're not picking Cole Eiserman. So talk to me about bringing 4 guys to supper. And are you surprised that they're bringing Cole Eiserman to supper? Like, I would have told you this 3 months ago, you probably would have believed it. But after having the 5th pick overall in the draft and the way Cole Eiserman finished this season, does it make sense to you?
Doesn't make sense if we're talking about the 5th overall pick. I don't have any information, but I don't believe, like a lot of people, that they're gonna pick Cole Eiserman. But there are a lot of questions on Cole Eiserman. He, like you said, he was the start of the year. He was considered as good as a prospect as Macklin, Celebrini. A lot of people were thinking it was a race between Celebrini and Eiserman for 1st overall, and then things changed during the year. People were questioning how impactful can he be in a game if he doesn't score goals. But the thing is, he scores a lot of goals. He scored 58 goals last year. He beat the Cole Caulfield record for most goals in the USNTDP program history. He's a goal scorer, and as far as I know, there's no book that teaches how to score goals. So you have to still be intrigued by this player. And as for the dinner, maybe are they planning maybe to a possible trade up from 26 to the mid-teens maybe, and hopefully Cole Eiserman is there. They wanted to know him better, know if he agrees with the criticisms, and if he's willing to change. Because like I said, learning to play defense, we can all do it. I think it's a matter of positioning. It's a matter of will. It's a matter if you want to. Commitment. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So you can learn it. You could teach it. Scoring goals, you can't. And if he becomes a 30-35 goal scorer in the NHL, that's a pretty good player. So the way I see it is probably like this, because teams, we have to understand that during the combine, teams have 20 minutes maximum for every interview. So in 20 minutes, you don't have a lot of time to dig deeper into a player personality and ask really and get to know the player, because a lot of scouts say these players, they're having 29, 30 interviews during the week. So it becomes pretty robotic. You know, they're so prepared and they answer the same answers every time. So maybe a dinner helps knowing a player better, asking questions, and having access to the real person instead of just the robot that was prepared by his agent to the question that were coming. I can see it, and it can also be a poker game, you know, because all the teams, they know that the dinner, it will come out sometime. The player will say it or some. Yeah. Buffalo's not a big city, and there are a couple of restaurants. So, of course, you're going to see. I saw Sam Dickinson leaving with the Montreal Canadiens while I was arriving at the Marriott Hotel. So, it's going to be known. So that might also be a poker game. Like we're bringing this guy, so we're interested in this guy, 5 overall. There are a lot of options, a lot of possible scenarios. Yeah.
And by the way, for those who don't know Cole Eiserman, I mean, it's a very similar game to Cole Caulfield's. The only difference being is that Caulfield's probably a 5'8", right-handed shot, and Cole Eiserman is a 6-foot left-handed shot. But they're both big-time goal scorers, and I think the worry, like you just said, with Eiserman is what the Canadiens tried to do with Cole Caulfield this year. Marty St. Louis trying to make Caulfield a better two-way player. Mm-hmm. There's a worry that, Eiserman is a one-dimensional player, and, is there going to be a commitment to try and make him a two-way player? Okay.
Yeah.
Supper with Lindstrom, Iginla, and Dickinson. Let's talk about Lindstrom and Iginla. Now, there's been years where the Canadiens have drafted players that they brought to supper. The way Marc Bergevin's regime, there was a lot of that. They brought Cole Caulfield to supper. They drafted him. They brought, hold on a second. They did not bring Slavkovsky to supper, I don't believe.
No.
Because I think he gave an answer at one point where you being drafted by them tastes better than the supper or something like that, right?
Yeah.
And I don't think they brought Ryan Backer to supper, did they?
No.
So sometimes they bring guys to supper and they draft them, and sometimes they don't bring guys to supper and they draft them. What do you think of? What do you make of Lindstrom and Iginla?
Well, I mean, it's not a surprise. There's interest, of course. Like I said at the start, plan A is to probably draft a forward. And the names we hear is like I said, Demidov, Lindstrom, Iginla is a name we hear a lot. There's Bickett Seneke, Berkeley Catton. There are a couple of very good forwards available in the top 10. So Lindstrom, I wasn't surprised at all. A lot of people think that he is the main target for Montreal. And Iginla is another one, and he's a fascinating story because he didn't play a lot last year. He was in a pack team in Seattle, didn't play a lot, and then was traded to Kelowna and exploded with 47 or 42 goals. So he would fit, but like I said at the start, and then they went with Dickinson. So that means I know we don't make too much into dinners, but that means that they have interest in defensemen too.
For sure.
So yes, I'm really intrigued in what they're going to do.
Don't forget, I mean, the intention is to draft somebody at 5 overall for sure, but they want to do an accelerated rebuild. So I think they want to meet with as many draft eligible players to do their homework on them as to whether to pick them or not pick them or possibly trade the pick away, right? So you have to try and gather as much information as you can. Mm-hmm. Speaking of which, what information did you gather on Ivan Demidov? We know that he was not there. We know that he's rehabbing an injury. We know that there's going to be a combine for Russian players, and Dan Milstein represents him, and he'll be present there. Snooping around, Grant McCagg was telling me yesterday that the closer we get to the draft here, he's starting to get the feeling that Demidov is going to be available at 5. Now, I know a lot of it depends on the Blackhawks here. I mean, the Blackhawks are the whole wild card in the whole. They're the whole wild card in the whole draft here. But what do you make of Demidov, and do you get the same feeling that he might slip?
It's possible. Like I said, I really believe that it all depends on the Blackhawks. But the thing with Demidov is the obvious thing is that he has a lot of talent. We can see it. A scout told me yesterday that if he played in the CHL last year and played in London, he would have made 120 points. Wow. He is that good, but the Russian factor still exists, and we've seen it with Michkov last year. The problem the difference between Michkov and Demidov is that Demidov only has 1 year left in his contract with SK St. Petersburg, but that's still a problem because from what I've heard, his clan are trying to make people understand in the NHL that he wants to play in North America, but that's not as simple as that in Russia. Last year, he played exclusively in the MHL, the Russian Junior League, a league he dominated before the year before. So he didn't have anything to prove in the MHL last year, but he played there because SKA was trying to sign an extension with him, and he didn't want to do it. So they said, we're not wasting any development in the pro team. We're just sending you back to to the Junior League, and that's it. So that can also become a problem because he still has a year in his contract in SKA. So if a team's draft this guy 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th overall, there's a risk that he still plays in the MHL next year because he doesn't want to sign an extension, and that can be a wasted development year. Wow! Because he'll be too good for the MHL. So that's a thing you have to understand, and a lot of questions will be answered. Like you said, Daniel Milstein is organizing a combine, so teams will be able to meet with him, see him on maybe not see him on the ice because he's rehabbing. I don't know if he'll be able to skate. But he's in Miami right now. He's rehabbing in Miami, so he is willing to come to North America, and teams will be able to meet with him. They're trying to convince them that teams that he wants to play North America, that his plan is to play North America, that he doesn't want to sign in SK with St. Petersburg. But then nothing is sure. At one point, 2 months ago, we were almost sure that Michkov was coming, and then it seems there doesn't seem to be any information on this sense right now. So it's a decision you have to make. And it's funny, I just saw it. I don't know who posted it on Twitter today. A video of Jeff Gorton last year. He's with all his staff probably in the pre-draft meeting just debating on what they want to do, and he was saying that sometimes we have to take chances, and I don't think people around this table are willing to take this chance. And he didn't name name, but we know it was Michkov.
Of course,
so
yes.
Are the Canadiens willing to take a chance this year at 5? To be honest with you, if he's available at 5, I haven't seen him, but from what I've heard from scouts, I'm running to the podium and I'm screaming his name, hoping that I don't get a blank like Carey Price did last year. And I'm just so happy that I have this kind of talent in my pipeline.
As I mentioned to you before, the SICK podcast is brought to you, partnered and sponsored by Energy Transportation Group, a leading full-service logistics provider serving all of North America, driven to be different. It's also brought to you in part by Bittt, Tibi, brewed in Quebec, a winner of a dozen international awards. Bittt Tibi offers quality microbrewery beers made with premium ingredients for everyone's taste. Bittt Tibi, embrace your true nature. And also brought to you in part by Playground. And Playground Summer Million is the must-play poker event of the season, featuring 15 championship ring events, $1 million in guaranteed prize pools with a $500,000 guaranteed main event. All right. Michael Hage. Talk to me about Michael Hage.
It's going to be a very emotional story when he gets drafted in Vegas, and I'm guessing it's going to be in the first round. He's from Ontario, but both his parents were born in Montreal and lived here until their 20s. Then they moved to Ontario, and that's where Michael Hage was born. But Michael's father, Alain, was a very big Habs fan. So Michael grew up in Ontario, a Habs fan, because his father was a Habs fan, and he was telling me how he liked the Habs and the moments they lived together when Montreal went to the Stanley Cup Finals in 21 during the COVID years. And his father died tragically last summer in July in a pool accident. There was a backyard barbecue, and then there was an accident, and he died in the pool. So he lost his father ahead of the most important hockey year of his life. And I got to talk to him in Buffalo, and it was a very beautiful interview, to be honest with you, because you never know how players this age are going to react when a journalist wants to talk about these kind of tough matters. But he was really open about it, and he said that everything he's been doing this year was for his father, because his father was his biggest fan, and biggest critics also. And so he's been playing for his father, and he was really open, and he said that, it brings perspective to life. You play game, you score goals, and then you have four games without a goal, and it's the end of the world. But when you lost your father in July, in such a tragic accident, goal draw become a little less important in your life. So it really gave him a perspective, and that we were debating this morning, and I was thinking, imagine if he's available at 26 in Montreal for Montreal, and they draft him. The guy grew up as a Habs fan. His father was a big Habs fan. died tragically, and then he gets drafted by the team his father adored so much. That would be Hollywood like a Hollywood like scenario. But really liked the interview. He was a very mature kid, and really excited to see where he ends up. And it's going to be emotional in this sense. I'm sure when he hears his name, the family will be there, and it's going to be a very emotional moment.
Yeah, I was just trying to bring up his hockey DB, and I have it right here. Michael Hage is a 6'1", 190-pound centerman, 18 years old, just turned on the 14th of April. Right-handed shot, plays in the USHL for the Chicago Steel. In 54 games this season, 33 goals, 42 assists, 75 points. Those are pretty good stats.
Yeah, he was one of the best players in the USHL, especially the second half of the season, because of course it was hard for him at the start of the season. He didn't have the best start of the season he hoped, because there was a lot in his head. But he was. A lot of people think he was the best player in the USHL in the second half of the season.
That's amazing, actually. I think I had it here. I was trying to find where he was in terms of scoring leaders in the USHL. I think I have it here. He was fourth, correct?
Yeah.
Fourth behind Gridden, Trevor Connolly, and Max Swanson. Trevor Connolly, it's funny, who picked up 3 points more than Michael Hage in 2 less games. Simon the Snake Boisvert is the president of the Trevor Connolly fan club.
Yeah.
I'm sure you've heard that before, right?
Yeah.
You...
Well, in terms of talent, he's a very good player, and a lot of scouts will tell you that he's top 10, top 5 in terms of talent. But there are other matters that some people question his character, his attitude. There were a couple stories that were published also on him, and a couple mistakes he made when he was younger.
Yeah.
So yeah, on pure talent, he's a top 5, top 10 talent.
Okay, what's going on with the league that I still call the Q? I still call it la Ligue Junior Majeure du Hockey du Québec, but I think it's la Ligue Junior Maritime or something right now. Yeah. A lot has been said, of course, in the province of Quebec, of Quebec-born players in the National Hockey League, and the numbers seem to be declining year after year after year after year. I think Quebec hockey is hurting. And I think based on the representation that we're going to have at the draft, I think that it's not going to be a good year again this year, is it?
It was the worst year ever by the Q last year. 12 only 12 players were drafted, and 5 from Quebec, and doesn't seem to be very much better this year. Scout told me it was a catastrophic year this morning about the Q. So. They say it's a cycle, but it seems like the cycle is hitting harder on Quebec than other markets. And if you talk to some, there's a lot of work to do. And you know, I think everybody knows that there's a lot of work to do in hockey in Quebec. And what happened to Jocelyn Thibault was a proof of that. It's not just the problem is not only the QMJHL, it's way before that. You know,
grassroots.
Yeah, exactly.
Minor
it's
hockey,
how you develop hockey players. And you know, some people, they go to Ontario and in the western provinces and say and scouts are going there and say there's a big difference in the level of play from younger players. We're not at the same level, and that has become a problem. Is it? Next year should be better. There are a couple great Quebec players, but maybe not as good as we'd hope. A lot of people are hoping that the 09, the crop that will be drafted in the Q next year is the 09 is supposed to be a very, very good crop. So they hope that this one will be good 2 years from. So there's still a lot of hockey to be played. So it's not just because, and there's always a debate: do scouts is is there as much importance given to Quebec than other leagues by scouts? And from what I'm hearing, it's just that there is not enough talent here, and they
But
can't.
Kevin, if I can, once that question is asked, it's a red flag already. There should be alarm bells going off that there's a problem. For the question to be even asked, it means that there's a problem somewhere. And look, I don't pretend to have all the answers, but I do know this, or I do think this. I think that there's way too many games. I think there's way too much travel. I think there's way too many long bus rides. I think there's not a lot of time for recuperation. I think they would be better served by having a lesser schedule, more time off, more time to recuperate, more time to work on their bodies. And then other than that, I mean, I can't really attest to what's going on in Finland or in Sweden or in Russia, but based on what I hear, there's a lot more puck skills, and there's a lot more playing with the puck than there would be in Quebec, where there's a lot more emphasis more on other things than there are on actually puck skills and individual development. And these are areas for improvement, obviously.
Yeah, and you know, Alexandre Picard from TVA Sports, he wrote a very troubling letter a couple of weeks ago.
It was amazing. About a month
describing
ago.
What he lived in, and comparing to what he's seen here, from what he had seen before in I think Germany when where his son was born. And the thing is, it's probably the same everywhere, but as long as coaches will want to win, will make win their first priority, you won't be developing hockey players, right?
It's winning at all costs. It's putting your own ego before the development of the player, which means you're playing your players that give you a best chance to win right away, and the other ones end up getting glued to the bench, and they never end up getting better.
Yeah, and you know, I'm not saying it's there's nothing good that's being done in hockey in Quebec, but I think from what we hear, and the departure of Jocelyn Thibault really brought back the subject. And from what we hear, there's a lot of people that don't put the children first. They think about them, they think about the win, or they think about their friend, but the emphasis should be put on the young players and the fun they have, and because that's the main thing, and how to develop their abilities. And that's probably what's lacking right now. I'm hoping that Stéphane Auger will be able to right the ship, but there's a lot of work to do.
Hey, in ending here in the next couple of minutes, and so appreciate your time, I want to get back to the combine for a second. It seems like everyone was talking about who went out to supper, who this, who that, some of the great quotes, but do we have some of the data? Who are some of the people that blew some of the players who blew people away with some of their combine testing?
Yeah, I don't have it. I don't have it. I know E.J. Emery. He's a defenseman from the U.S. national program. He's a freak, and he was outstanding in a lot of categories. I know that Kaden Lindstrom, he's injured. That there's a concern there that we haven't talked, but there's a concern here. His back, he was injured. He missed the second half of the year.
He says he trains 5 to 6 times a week at very high intensity, nothing to worry about. And by the way, his fitness trainer is Brendan Gallagher's father, Ian.
Yeah.
So I think Ian says that in the last 20 or 30 years that he's been training athletes, I think I read this somewhere, that Kaden Lindstrom is probably like the strongest one, like the biggest specimen that he's had.
Yeah, and Lindstrom agents gave a medical report to every team, basically saying that he should be able to recover fully. But he participated in a couple of testings, not all of them, and he was very good in those. He's also a very good athlete. We can just see when we see 6'3", 213 at 18 years old. There's so much growth left in him. So he was also very good. I think he finished in top 5 for bench press or something like that. So
he reminds me of Byfield. Byfield for several reasons. Like in ending, okay, D-heavy draft. Grant McCagg was saying, everyone's saying it's a D-heavy draft, and he said, well, it can be. And now we're hearing that Chicago might take Levshonov and Anaheim might take Silyev, but he said, he can make a case where the first 5 picks go out as forwards. So how do you see it? Do you think it's a D-heavy draft? Yes or no?
Yes. I don't see a world where there's not at least 2 defensemen taken top 5, maybe 3. I think Lukshunov goes in the top 5, and then there's Dickinson also that we shouldn't forget. He was very good at the Memorial Cup. He's one of the most NHL ready defensemen available this year. And Selayev is intriguing. The people are wondering if you're not drafting the next Zdeno Chara. So there's a big package there. So I think 2 to 3 defensemen in the top 5 and maybe 6 in the top 10, top 10, 12 maybe.
Kevin,
so that's a big defenseman draft.
From Le Journal de Québec and Le Journal de Montréal, who was at the Combine last week in Buffalo. Amazing stuff. Your first time on the Sick Podcast. I guarantee you it's not going to be your last. Let's meet up for a beverage in Vegas, huh?
Sure.
And we'll give the bill to Agnello and Sammy at Master Control. How about that?
That sounds great.
We'll talk to you soon. Thank you so much. Have a good one.
Thanks.
All right, there you have it. Speaking of which, we are going to Vegas. Let's bring it up right now. Huh? The Sick Podcast NHL draft coverage presented by Betway. Betway, a leading global online betting and gaming brand that offers you a leading betting experience. Go on betway.com or scan the QR code to join the action. Must be 18 and over and play responsibly. Thank you to Betway once again. Let's bring it back up. 3 podcasts are going. The Sick Podcast with Tony Marinaro, that's me. The Sick Podcast, The Eye Test with Pierre Maguire and Jimmy Murphy. And the Sick Podcast Recruits Draft Cast with Shane Gaumont, who'll be live there in Vegas, along with myself, Pierre Maguire, Jimmy Murphy, and of course, the entire Cavallaro family. The Sick Podcast NHL draft coverage presented by Betway. Once again, special thanks to all of our sponsors. Energy Transportation Group, thank you. Bittt TB, thank you. Playground, thank you. And to all of our listeners and our viewers, we look forward to seeing you. Hopefully, we will see you on Thursday afternoon for a live show at 1 p.m. We should be there at around 11:30 in the morning at Souvlaki Authentique, 410 Chemin de la Grande Côte in Boisbriand. A live podcast, and we're going to upload it later on that night, and you'll be able to watch it at 10 o'clock, so you'll be able to watch it twice during the day, at 1 and at 10. How about that, huh? Thank you so much for watching. If you liked it, comment SICK, S-I-C-K. Sure, tell your friends about it. Leave us a 5-star review on Apple. It's our way of feeling the love for Agnello and Sammy and Master Control. They're Cavallaro. Have a good night. We'll be back tomorrow night, same time, same place. I'm Marinaro.
And that's a wrap. Hope you don't miss us too much until next time. Follow the Sick Podcast with Tony Marinaro on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Google Play, and Apple Podcasts. The Sick Podcast is brought to you by Energy Transportation Group, driven to be different. LaBita.tb, embrace your true nature. And Playground, your premier gaming destination.